Hey guys, welcome to our SoulFam Podcast, where I interview space holders from all over the world. I'm your host. My name is Karolina, and I'm the power couple therapist. Today on the show, we have my dear friend and ex-partner Ricky Flo, the multidimensional being connected to everything through all time and space. Welcome to the show, Ricky. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for that intro. And just to clarify, we are all multidimensional beings connected to everything through all time and space. I just have the audacity to allow myself to identify in that way, let's say.
I'm loving that you're identifying this way right now because Ricky is also a writer and a future author of amazing books that some of them I already read and they are really, really cool. So I'm excited to talk to you today, especially that we have a lot of past together and we've been together for 3.5 years. And today I would love to touch upon the topic of intimacy and relationships. So I'm curious to know what's your definition of intimacy?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is the thing that I heard somewhere along the line of intimacy meaning into me see, like the ability to see into someone, to see into their soul, essentially. So connecting with someone on more of like a deeper level, connecting with the soul, and and sure, connecting with all the other aspects of their being as well, like their body and their mind and things like that. But the way I think of intimacy is like what it means to be intimately connected to someone is to be deeply connected to someone, to connect with their soul, to go beyond just the surface level connection. So throughout this conversation, if we refer to the word, intimacy or being intimate, we don't mean to be sexually connected. We mean to be deeply connected in a way that is just like a deeper connection. And that can still be just being friends without any kind of like um physical, sexual connection, but just being deeply connected. So to summarize, I see it as like connection with the soul or just like deep connection. That's what it means to me to be intimate with someone, or what's what intimacy means to me.
I'm actually really curious to know whether you think that if someone does not really connect to their soul, can they really truly be intimate with someone else? Because like that's a question that comes to my mind because I don't know how it feels not to be connected to my soul anymore. But I'm curious, like, do you feel like the real intimacy, the requirement for that is to actually be connected to yourself on such a deep level that then you can connect to someone else?
I think that I'll put it this way. I feel like we can only see someone as deeply as we can see ourselves, or we can only really connect to someone as deeply as we connect to ourselves. And just one thing I also want to discern and clarify is that we're all connected to our soul, but in our actual experience of life and experience of each moment, the level to which we're experientially connected to our soul can kind of vary, like moment to moment. And if someone is kind of like pre-spiritual awakening and they're just kind of stuck in the mundane, kind of like physical aspect of reality without being connected to like a kind of like higher purpose or a higher awareness of who they are as a spiritual being, then it's not that they're disconnected from their soul, it's that experientially they're not aware that they're a spiritual being. And it's just a different lens of reality. So we're all connected to our soul, but experientially, the level to which we experience that connection can vary. But to answer your question, yeah, I feel like we can only see someone as deeply as we see ourselves. We can only feel someone as deeply as we feel ourselves. We can only connect with someone as deeply as we connect ourselves. And I do believe that overall, everything is like a mirror, and our external, experience and what we're seeing in front of us is essentially mirroring to us our current way of how we see ourselves. So, yeah, to connect intimately with someone is just going to mirror our own level of intimacy with ourselves.
Yeah, and I love what you said about we are always connected to our soul. And what I meant in my example is like you can, for example, actively love someone, like actually feel the love in your body and like love someone in the moment, and you can be aware of it and you can also just be love because everything is love anyway. And so like it's something that you're aware of and like actively doing. So in a way, like what I mean, when you're connected to your soul, of course you always are, but I meant it in a context of like actually being aware of this connection and like, you know, deepening your connection, deepening your relationship with your higher self and being aware of it. But yeah, I love what you said, that everyone is always connected to their soul, because like without that we wouldn't be here. So yeah, I love that. And I totally resonate with the fact that when we deeply connect to ourselves and love ourselves and see ourselves and understand ourselves, this is how deeply we can understand someone else. So that actually boils down to this concept of people pleasing. And like, if you're always giving to someone and never give to yourself, you cannot actually really fully open your heart, because like that's only part of you that can, you know, be expressed in a way when you love someone else. And I was there in the past, you know, I could not really love myself. I could love everyone around me, but it was so hard for me to love myself. But when I actually started loving myself, the love to someone else skyrocketed as well, because then my heart was so open that I was able to pour even more into someone else, because I was able to hold even more within myself. So that's actually really beautiful. So thank you so much for mentioning that. And I would love to maybe tell to everyone who listens and they don't really know our story, just like a snippet of our story and why now we are even talking about intimacy. Because we saw each other recently in Australia, like a few weeks ago, after 2 years after we broke up. It was our first encounter as friends with our new dynamic. And I don't know how it felt for you, but to me, it felt like we are still intimately connected, but just not sexually and not romantically, but we are still just besties and like people that love spending time with each other. And literally, to me, it felt like nothing really changed apart from the fact that we're not together, we're not sexual with each other, we're not romantic. But apart from that, it was just like old times. That's how it felt to me. And I'm curious about your perspective. And maybe if you feel cold to it, there I say it, maybe you can tell a little bit of a story of, yeah, just a snippet of our relationship and our breakup, because that was quite interesting, and how it all played out with Danny, who is our best friend, both mine and Ricky's, and now Ricky and Danny are in a relationship, which I think it's also interesting to mention, because some people really resist the idea of your best friend being with your ex-partner or whatever, which I, yeah, don't resist at all. So if you are happy to share a little bit about that and your perspective on our connection as well, that would be super lovely.
Sure. So, um, it's been a little over 2 years since we separated, Carolina, and we were together for about 3.5 years. So, if I go back about 5.5 years, and just for some context, we're recording this at the end of 2023. So, if we go back 5.5 years, we met when you were in Australia, and we entered a relationship which lasted 3.5 years, which was beautiful. And there was so much love and growth and expansion and experience and all of that. And then towards the end of that, I essentially felt a deep calling to have more spaciousness in my life. And something really close to my heart is being a writer. I feel like a big part of my purpose here is to write books, to share wisdom that I channel from, the spirit realm. And at that moment in time, I felt a real calling to have spaciousness. And it felt like our relationship had to end to create the spaciousness that I felt like I needed to go on this journey of like becoming a writer and connecting more with myself and my purpose and all of that. And that's kind of what led to our relationship ending. And yeah, definitely wasn't like I want this to end type thing. There were some kind of challenges that we were having and all that, but it really felt like the main reason that our relationship ended was because I felt like I needed the spaciousness, and ultimately us being in relationship didn't feel like it was in service of like my highest purpose in the world. And yeah, so we separated. We took a certain period of time. I think it was 6 months, and then we extended it a little bit longer of just not talking to each other, but ultimately with the intention of always reconnecting as friends. And then after maybe 8, 9 months, something like that, we kind of reconnected and virtually, because you were overseas, I was in Australia, back in Australia at that point in time, um and then yeah, just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we saw each other in person for the first time since then, and we spent some beautiful time together for 5 or so days whilst you were here in Australia, and it's been a couple weeks since then. But yeah, now it feels like we're very much reconnected as close friends, and it does feel like, to me, to echo what you said, I really feel like our connection is so strong, and there's just certain dynamics that have shifted. Like you said, we're no longer sexually or romantically involved, but we still have such a beautiful connection and friendship that we can enjoy. So that's a bit of a summary of where we're at. And then also, yeah, to mention um, my partner Danny, who I'm actually currently using her Zoom. So I'm not sure how this will show up in the recording, but if it shows up as Danny, then there we go. I might actually just, whilst we're here, just see if I can update that, because that might be a bit weird.
No worries.
Rename. Here we
Everyone will
go.
know.
Ricky Flo. That's who I am. But yeah, so it's interesting because whilst we were together, we both had a mutual friend, Danny, and we actually lived with Danny and her partner at the time, Ryan, who's one of my closest friends, and you know, became friends with you as well, Karolina. So we were all living together as friends, but then it's funny how time passed, and then Ryan and Danny broke up, Karolina and I broke up, and then fast forward a certain period of time, and Danny and I ended up getting together, and that was a complete surprise and complete curveball.
But tell us the
Um,
story about the vision you got, because this is so random.
so what specific story do you want to hear?
After we broke up, you said that after a month you got a vision of being with Danny. You remember?
It was actually only a few days, and it's crazy because what happened was when Carolina and I broke up, my friend Ryan was actually I came to Costa Rica. Oh no, it was like a so we broke up, but we spent a month kind of like still together to kind of close the relationship. And then after that, um, like or towards the end of that, Ryan was in Costa Rica. We were in Costa Rica. And then Ryan and I ended up going to a different part of Costa Rica, and Carolina stayed kind of in a certain location. So then Ryan and I were kind of off in a new Airbnb in Costa Rica, and we ended up doing a virtual Tony Robbins event. And we like had really built the energy one night, and we were in this real like intuitive kind of like vibe. But honestly, it might have even been a full moon. Like it felt like the energy was so high. And then just intuitively, like, because I was connected to kind of like all time and space, and I was having these like intuitive visions and stuff, it I started to feel kind of just something that was kind of emerging in my future, and it felt like there was something with me and Danny, but Danny was Ryan's ex, so I just named it with Ryan. I was like, dude, I'm just feeling like I'm like really in my intuition right now, and it's not all making sense, but I'm feeling like there's something energetically between Danny and I that's like really magical, and I don't really know what it is. And then he asked me, he was like, "Do you think that you want to be with Danny?" And at the time, I was like honestly, in this present moment, no. 'Cause I just broke up with Carolina. I feel like I've got to go through this grieving, and I'm kind of on this journey of being single and rediscovering myself and reinventing myself. And I actually don't even want to be in a relationship right now, but I do sense like somewhere in the field that there's like something there. And essentially in that moment, we had a kind of moment where he let me know, he was like, if you ever feel like that is true for you to be with Danny, like I love you and I want you to experience what's true for you in your heart. And it was this nice, moment. And then, then fast forward some time, I think it was probably about 7 or 8 months later that Danny and I did get together. And
Can I
And
say
yeah, and then that
something?
was, yeah, go
I
ahead.
just think it's such a beautiful thing that like I, as your ex, am super happy that you're with Danny, and the same with Ryan. Like as your bestie, he's like, yeah, go on, be with my ex if that makes you happy. I feel like it's such a inspiring thing for so many people because so many people are like, no, you do not touch my ex if you're my bestie. Like this is outside of the rules of being best friends. But I'm just thinking, love is free. Like if your best friend is in love with your ex, like would you really tell them to not be together? Like if you just look at them as people. And I think it's so beautiful that Ryan was also okay with that. And also it's a beautiful inspiring story for people who maybe are thinking like, oh, maybe I'm not gonna find anyone, or oh, I'm looking for someone and I cannot find, I'm so single for so long. That sometimes people who are already in your field can become your life partner, kind of like you and Daniel. Like you've known each other for so long, like so many years, and you've never really looked at each other in a romantic way before that. And I know because I spoke to you and to Danny, and before that your energies were not as harmonious as they are right now. So literally it can happen with anyone, even with your best friend, that at some point in your life when you grow and you grow towards the same energy, if I can call it like that, you just grow harmoniously with someone, even though at some point in your life you might be really far away energetically from someone. Then you grow and you grow closer together, and now you guys are together. And honestly, when we were together and I would see you and Danny, I would say, please no, like it's not gonna work. It's just like I remember we had these fights where like you and then you were like shouting at each other because we were just so triggered and whatever. It was like old times when we didn't know how to manage our emotions that well as we know right now. But still, at that point, I would be like, come on, like I would not see you guys together. And now you're in such a beautiful, harmonious relationship. And I experienced it. I saw you together, and I think it's a beautiful connection. I can feel it really in my heart. So just to inspire other people that sometimes you don't even know who is there for you, and it might be even someone close to you that you would not even think. Because I remember when Danny told me the story of how you expressed romantic interest in her, she was like, what the hell, like this is so random, like I would not even look at Ricky in this way, and now she's like so in love with you. So everything can happen, and I think it's such a magical story of everything, like how we all connected and how we all grew together. Because I even remember when Danny was mitigating our conflicts and she was the mediator and like telling me not to break up with you, and you were like, you said something triggering to me or whatever. And I just think it's so funny and also so inspiring, because you never know what the universe will bring for you. And I just think it's amazing, and it's worth sharing the story with people so that they get inspired and open to all the possibilities of how the universe flows for them.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll respond to some of that. So the first thing I feel like I want to mention is that um Danny and I getting together, like now you, Carolina, and Ryan have come to like really understand our love and to be happy that we're together, and each of you have kind of your lives and your romantic lives have like evolved into your alignment and all of that. But I also just want to mention, so that the listeners don't get a misrepresentation, that there was some emotion and things to navigate, understandably, that um the moment that you became aware, Carolina, that Danny and I were becoming romantically involved, that took some time for you to like process and to kind of like get on board with, and the same for Ryan, and it was a different process for both of you, and it was something that I felt like I was very respectful of and understanding of the process that was needed. And I just want to say to the listener that if they find themselves in a situation, anything like this, that I really want to just encourage like a real deep compassion for everyone's experience. And I want it to be known that this wasn't something that just kind of happened with like carelessly. This was something that in my heart, I felt like I was just attuning to my heart in every moment to navigate it with as much love and compassion and understanding and communication as possible, because, I really love and respect and care for Karolina, and for my best friend Ryan, and obviously for Danny. And it was very character building, and it required a lot of like patience and communication and compassion to really navigate it in a way where now I feel so blessed that, I can have my relationship with Danny and simultaneously maintain such a beautiful friendship and connection with Karolina and with Ryan. So just want to mention that. And then um there was something else that I wanted to say there, but let's just keep it there and
So
then
I
see what
will
else
I will
flows
add
here.
something to this. Thank you so much for mentioning it, because it wasn't all unicorns and rainbows all the time. But when you actually know how to work with your emotions and you don't treat it as something bad, then you're able to navigate it, even if it's really hard. Because for me, it was hard at the beginning when Ricky started being with Danny, because I felt abandoned again, because Ricky said that, hey, look, I need to take some space from you again, because now I'm starting relationship with Danny and I need to focus on her without your energy being around, because that affects my relationship. So for me, it was hard, because I already thought that I got my best friend back and he's in my life again. And then I had to take more space, like another 3 months or so without him. And I felt abandoned again. And so I had to go through my wounds of like being abandoned. And I had to go through, my fears of like, okay, how it's going to change my dynamic, because Danny is also my best friend and Ricky is also my best friend, and like how it's going to go now, is it going to change anything? So of course there was a process for me, but ultimately I feel like you communicated to me in a way where of course it was hurtful what happened in terms of like taking even more space and me feeling abandoned, but you communicated with so much love and care that you really let me know like why you need the space, and that you still love me and still want to connect, but just not right now. So I was able to process it to the degree where I just felt all my childhood wounds that were triggered by this situation and worked on it, so that then I actually felt grateful that this is what happened, because I was able to go deeper into the layers of abandonment wound that I've had. So ultimately, everything is a gift, even these kind of situations where something seems hard. And I knew that I want to be best friends with you and Danny. So I had to work through my emotions. I just had to accept it. I just had to be okay with it. And I'm so glad that I did, because now that I'm like, after these processes, I feel even more amazing. And the same after our breakup. Like the breakup was one of the biggest gifts for me, because I was able to go so deeply into my wounds that I've never had this opportunity to do it before. And it made me feel so much better, because now I'm so much lighter when all this trauma is out of my body. So my point here is, like, if you feel negative about this kind of situation, if you're in this kind of situation in your life, allow yourself to feel like shit, because you're gonna feel like shit, because it's a weird situation to be in when your ex is with your best friend or whatever, right? It is a weird situation, but if you actually work through it and you're able to accept your emotions, accept how your process goes, and then really come from a place of love, it can blossom into such a beautiful connection that you have with both your ex and your best friend, and it doesn't have to be anything bad for you. So thank you so much for mentioning, Ricky, because I feel like everything in social media is like, rainbows and unicorns, but it was hard. The process was hard, but still, like, or maybe it was not hard in terms of like difficult, it was just emotionally very, very deep, but it's a simple process if you actually allow it to happen, if you don't resist your emotions. So yeah, thanks so much for mentioning that, because this is really, really valuable.
Yeah. And I also mentioned that it was also challenging for me, like I like kind of, let's say, through the lens of my mind and wanting things to feel controlled and like simple and not emotionally challenging. Like if I kind of had it through the preference of my egoic mind, of course I would want my life partner and the woman that I most want to be with to just be someone that's not like my best friend's ex, like that. Then, Ryan and I, had to navigate that. And something that Ryan needed was space to kind of like just kind of focus on his life without that being something that is constantly bringing up, certain emotion and things like that. So then we had like a 5 or 6 month period of space, and then that, we kind of came back together as friends, and we had to navigate some things, and then we needed a bit more space, and like it was something that we just had to navigate, and now it feels like we're closer than ever. But I also want to mention that like this was challenging for me. Like with Ryan, and then also with Karolina, it's like I would have loved to just be reconnected with Karolina as friends, and to have the support and safety of that close connection, and the love that we share for each other as friends. I would have loved to have had that there to just support me through my life and to bring joy into my life. But it was something that just had to be navigated. And I feel like that there's lots of lessons in this. And I feel like if I kind of like chunk higher into like what are some of the macro lessons here, is I feel like it's like trusting the unfolding of, the divine plan, or it's like trusting that we're guided to evolve, and that sometimes the universe throws us these like curveballs, or these just unexpected plot twists that ultimately lead to evolution and expansion, and they align us into deeper purpose, and they open our hearts more, and they allow us to bring light to certain darkness inside of us, and to create alchemy and all of these things. But it's like sometimes we get hit with something we don't expect, and then it's only after some like big journey of transformation that we can look back and be like, wow, that brought about so much transformation. Now I know myself so much deeper, and I've brought light to so much darkness, and I've alchemized so much trauma and all this stuff, to then be in a position where it's like, okay, now I can exhale until the next journey starts.
Until the next shit comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I feel like, we don't see it in the moment, but every bad situation is just for our expansion and for our nervous system to be able to handle more and more, so that then any situation that comes our way is kind of chill for us, because we know, okay, I've experienced already so many shitty emotions that now anything that comes is gonna be fine, because I know that my nervous system is expanded enough to be able to hold it, and not to, go on a downward spiral and get depressed or anything like that, because you know how to process it. And of course, it's a process of processing as well. And the more you process your emotions, the easier it becomes, and the more you allow it and less you resist it. So it gets easier with practice for sure. But it's actually great to mention that once you learn how to do it, no situation is really a threat to you, because then you can handle pretty much anything. And recently, some other couple of my besties decided to maybe open the relationship, or maybe potentially in the future separate, or maybe even break up, or maybe not. Like, we don't really know. And my other friend was kind of concerned, like, yeah, what do you think? Like, if they don't want to talk to each other, don't want to see each other. And I was just like, I had such a positive perspective, because these are the people that really know how to work on their emotions, and they know how to handle their trauma, and how to reprogram their subconscious mind. So I had literally zero doubts about them being best friends in the future, because if you have a history with someone of, like, let's say 10 plus years being together, like, it's really unlikely that you're just gonna want to kick out this person entirely from your life, and not want to work through your emotions and then be close to them, because it's like you shared so much life together, that to me it sounds insane even to do that. Like, from my perspective. And I know that some people do, and of course it depends on how the relationship ends, because if it ends in, like, with cheating or whatever, some dodgy stuff, then of course it's not aligned. But if it just ends out of misalignment, kind of like with us, where we just decided, okay, it's not going to work anymore, and we need to shift our relationship, and nothing major happened to break us up, then I feel like it's way nicer to actually be in contact with this person, to have this person in your life, because the fact that you've been together for so long means something, means that your connection is deep, means that you're soulmates, you're meant to meet in this life and exchange energy. And of course it plays out differently for everyone, but once you know how to be with your emotions and nurture your inner child and go deep into your childhood trauma and see where these emotions right now are coming from originally, like where it all started, then you can really have it mild as a journey and really allow everything and accept, have compassion towards what's coming up, and then you can be sweet afterwards and look back a few years and then be like, oh my god, I'm so glad that it happened. And that boils down to intimacy as well, because I feel like without intimacy between me and you, for example, we would not be able to communicate in a way where we feel love, communicate in a way where we understand the other person's needs and desires and really take it on board. Like, because that's it. I feel like intimacy is about trust as well. When you have trust, which I define as my mentor Teal Swan says, is to take someone's best interest into account, into consideration. So in this case, me trusting Ricky and Ricky trusting me, I was able to give space to Ricky and Danny to be connected in the relationship initially and take space from them, both of them. Really, it was also hurtful for me to not talk to Danny for a few months, because we've been connected for years online, but like consistently, and then I had to take space from both of you. And that also requires trust, and that requires intimacy, because me feeling into you guys, I felt that you need to separate from me, although it was triggering my abandonment wound. I was trusting that it's the best for all of us and it's going to blossom into something even better. But without intimacy and without trust, I don't think I would be able to do that, because I don't think I would be able to feel you and your needs, and maybe you would not be able to feel me so deeply and what I need. And yeah, I just feel like it's so fundamental to have these energies around if you want to have harmonious relationships, even with your ex who is with your bestie.
Yeah, I feel you. And one thing I want to comment on all of that is I feel like, when it comes into the field of like spirituality and like what does it mean to be spiritual or conscious or so on. I feel like really what it means is to be connected to the field or to be connected to the energy that unites us all, and to realize that we're all connected and that we're not separate. It's like you can feel alone or you can feel all one or you can feel somewhere in the middle, right? And I feel like what you're speaking to is that you had a level of intimacy with yourself and a certain level of consciousness to realize that we are connected and that what is most needed for the collective energy, in this case, for the collective energy of you, Danny, and I, you could recognize what was most needed was that there is space that's needed, and that this needs to kind of like, play out as it is, and that you ultimately trusted that the energy would kind of like move in the way that it would, and that ultimately we would reconnect and all be able to share beautiful friendship and connection and all of that. And I think that that's just something that I'd love the listener to really like allow to drop in, is it's like, if we're ever just focused on our own pain and our own triggers and our own wounds and trauma and our own feelings, that's, I've had my moments and I still do at times where I'm so focused on myself, but I usually at a certain point, if not at first, then after the fact, will recognize that like, okay, I am one vessel of many that the spirit and the energy is flowing through to create certain dynamics and experience and to allow purpose to manifest in different beings and all of that. And I feel like when we can connect to the collective energy and like understand like what's actually happening here for the collective energy here, and to recognize that, well, my belief is that the collective energy is creating evolution and expansion, and it's creating healing, and it's bringing us back towards an awareness that we are all connected and we are all one. And I feel like when I tune into that awareness, I see different perspectives to the perspective that sometimes I see when I'm triggered, which is that I'm in pain and I'm feeling emotion and it's unpleasant and everyone else is like hurting me and whatever. But when I zoom out of that, and I still honor that when that's there, but then when I zoom out, I can actually recognize like, okay, this is actually all for my evolution. This is all for me to know myself deeper. This is for others to know themselves deeper. This is actually helping us to connect deeper, to create more trust with each other, to create more trust with myself, to create more trust with spirit, whatever word you want to use. And I think that's really powerful to tune into that awareness that this isn't just about me and my pain. And, if I compare the dynamic and the unfolding of events that we've experienced and our ability to navigate it, if I compare that to like this same situation in, let's say, a group of friends that aren't as self-aware and conscious and taking each other as parts of themselves, then it's a completely different story. So, I feel like it's just interesting to look at the different perspectives of like if someone isn't able to be friends with their ex, or if someone, has all this resentment and anger and frustration and they can't navigate a certain thing, I feel like I would assume that in most cases, there actually is still a lot of love there, but there's also a lot of pain. And then the choice might be to end the friendship, or the choice might be to, go different ways, but not because there's not love, but because there's not a capacity to navigate it. And I'm just trying to share some perspectives here that allow the capacity to be there to navigate it. If you recognize that it's all for expansion, it's all to deepen our ability to love ourselves and each other and all these kinds of things, then it can be navigated. But if we don't have those perspectives, then we're just in the this is hurtful, I'm betrayed, how could you do this, whatever, then it's going to be a different story. And then if it is a different story, then there's the potential of someone then living the rest of their life with so much pain in their heart and resentment and regret and all of that. And I feel like all of us decided and chose to have our hearts open and to still be connected because we know that we love each other. And then we all navigated whatever was there to be navigated that was painful. And I think now we're all glad that we did.
That's so beautiful, Ricky. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And this is exactly my intention for this episode as well, so that people realize a different perspective and expand their capacity for love, because really it is love. It is taking someone as a part of you and just really, yeah, like being okay with their choices and at the same time taking care of your choices and your desires and your needs. So thanks so much for mentioning that. And I feel like it's such a beautiful cherry on the cake, what you just said, to end this episode number 200, after which I'm going to take a little break, or maybe a big break, or I don't know, after recording this episode. But I would love to also mention that me and Ricky are working on something that we want to release at some point in the future. So maybe you want to mention something about this, Ricky?
Sure. So the way I'll mention it, and this is something I haven't spoken to you directly about, Carolina, but I feel like the title of the thing I'm going to mention may shift. So I'm not going to actually say a specific title, but essentially we're collaborating on a project that the end result will be a certain book that people will be able to read. And this book holds certain wisdom and information about a lot of the things we talked about today and lots of other things. And I would say that essentially we're collaborating in a book that helps people to navigate deeper relationships, deeper intimacy, understanding energetics and how like energy flows so that you can have a deeper awareness of energy and how that influences relating and intimacy and connection and all of that. So I think that's kind of what I'll say. But essentially, yeah, I'm really excited that we're collaborating on this book and we haven't talked much about it recently, but essentially when we're in person, this kind of came to light and kind of just naturally emerged. And now we're at the stage of the process where we have to kind of like, dial it in and actually move it towards having something in our hand that we can share with others. But essentially, if you're listening to this and you found this valuable and you're interested in, learning more and whatever, just let's say follow Karolina online. You can also follow me. My website's rickyflow.com, and you can find me on socials. I am Ricky Flow on Instagram. And as in I am Ricky Flow on Instagram, like not Ricky Flow, but I am Ricky Flow. And but yeah, if you follow me, follow Carolina, like when it's there to be available, that'll be there. But yeah, that's really exciting because I feel like we can take a lot of this wisdom that we've learned through this journey and share it with others. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's just for people that have gone through or are going through something like we went through. It's just generally about intimacy, relationships, energy, all of that. So
And
that's what's
love.
up. And love.
Yeah, we love love. Thank you so much, Ricky, for this conversation. I really appreciate you as a person and you as a speaker as well. You're such an amazing speaker. And so please, guys, follow Ricky. He writes amazing things, he channels so much wisdom. And so go to his website and follow him on socials because I'm super looking forward to his work and when it's going to be released and to our work together as well. So thanks so much, Ricky. I really, really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.